I'm Llewellyn Morgan. I am from Oxfordshire County Council. I, from next month, managing a new service in the council called the Innovation Hub. But we've grown that service out from a dark room that was hid behind transport, planning and energy. And recently we've told the rest of the council what we've been doing. And thankfully they liked it. So if it went down differently, I probably wouldn't be here. So one of the big areas we've been working in is autonomous vehicles. I suppose the ethos of what we try to do is change the council to being quite closed and not working with business and particularly universities, which is completely idiotic when you're in Oxford and all the brains that we had on our doorstep, to be much more open and receptive, and also try to use the place as a way of building up the research understanding within the authority, but also supporting ideas that grow out of the university and supporting businesses to grow in Oxfordshire, and hopefully then from our point of view they stay in Oxfordshire. And CAV's been one of the areas that we've built up largely because of the work that goes on in Oxfordshire. So we're really lucky. We have got the Oxford Robotics Institute is in Oxford. We've got Ingmar Poznan and Paul Newman, two of the leading thinkers in autonomous vehicles in the world. So it would be foolish of us to not talk to them and understand how we can support the development of the work that they've been doing. So we've been working with ORI for about the last 4 years, and we've been supporting the work they've been doing and supporting their spin out Oxfordshire since they started with just one person, which was Graham, in the back of a dark room in the back of the ORI. So they've really helped us understand where autonomous vehicles are going, what's happening, and how we integrate that into some of our policy thinking. So just some background on Oxfordshire, for people who might not know what's going on in Oxford at the moment. We're in the centre of the Oxford, the centre on the edge of the Oxford Cambridge brain belt, whatever you want to call it, the thinking area, England's economic heartland, lots of other acronyms. Essentially in Oxfordshire we've got a lot of growth. We've got 100,000 homes, 100,000 jobs. They're really they're pretty much focused around Oxford, Bicester, and what's called Science Vale, which is Didcot, Milton Park, Harwell, Colham. These are business science parks, which a lot of them were built up around nuclear research, so they were put in places that weren't easily to get to, and now they're putting thousands of people there. So we're now having to solve the problems of decisions made years ago. So those are some of the challenges we've got. Is that we've got a lot of jobs going into places that are isolated from the main transport networks and even the urban areas. So we're trying to connect this all together. And there's been a lot of press about work going on the Oxford-Cambridge ARC, brain belt, whatever. We've worked closely with our colleagues across this region. So we also lead a lot of the work for the Innovation for England's Economic Heartland, which is our subnational transport body in waiting. And so we work very closely with colleagues across the whole region. So that's what we've been trying to put in place. So the idea that we build up this lean learning system across all our service areas, and particularly in the transport environment. So we come up with ideas, test it, learn, come up with new ideas, develop, improve. One of the first things we did was in trying to embed some of this thinking into policy, which was trying to hook the councillors onto this. So it enabled us to more legitimately do some of the stuff we were doing, I suppose. We developed something called Science Transit Strategy. Martin Tugwell came up with that name, who's now head of EEH. So that's his legacy when he was at Oxfordshire County Council. This is the idea that we need to think differently about connecting up all the places in Oxfordshire, but also solving Oxford's transport problems. We can't build out of it. So we've got to look completely differently about how we manage Oxford and Oxford's transport problems. So this is a sub-strategy of our local transport plan and was adopted. And within this we had mobility as a service, autonomous vehicles, not so much specific policies that, we will have this will happen with autonomous vehicles. Mobility service will be, in place by 2020. It was opening the way for it. And we think we were the first place in the country to adopt any sort of policy around this. And this was three years ago now. And we had a lot of help from ITP at the time of working out what the landscape looked like. So essentially that's an infographic of what the policy includes within the LTP. And we're just coming up to update that now. One of the other things we did about 3 years ago is through starting out with Innovate UK and sort of collaborative projects, is we found we needed a neutral player that allowed the big boys to play with the startups and also the universities. So in the transport space, we set up a group called MoBox. It's a community interest company. And that has the universities and a group of entrepreneurial SMEs as core directors, and then partners that sit off that. And that helps build the network locally, helps Innovate UK projects start. Sometimes LEEDS Innovate UK projects tend to be the ones that are much more research focused. The idea is if this turns into a business idea and model it, you spin it out and do it outside of MoBox to keep it neutral. So one of the companies at the end actually came out of MoBox that we talk about, one of the CAV companies. So one of the other things we've been looking at is we were very closely with Column and RACE, which is Remote Applications in a Controlled Environment, or Robots in Dangerous Places, as we always call it in there. That's the sort of Robotics in Dangerous Places catapult, for want of a better word. That's situated in Column. Built up originally around the robotics sector, around nuclear industry. But actually, quickly, they realised between Column and the expertise they had on the site, this was a really good place to start using for CAV and AV testing. So we've supported Column in the early days of building up the business case for this and supporting everything they do there. And they've really helped fuel the CAV sector in Oxfordshire. They are now one of the first official test sites with Millbrook. And so they're the real-world closed test site for the UK. But what's interesting is they've got planning permission for 1,000 extra jobs and also a community next to it. So they're trying to embed CAV's future mobility into that. So they build a new community that has this thinking embedded in it from the start. And that gives us our own challenge around planning policy, design, all sorts of things. What does an adoptable highway look like if it's only going to be for CAVs? So these are the things that we're trying to work through at the moment. And this is one of their vision videos that they use to try and explain to the local community what they're trying to think about, which was interesting. You may have seen that the village that Column was next to was part of the planning documentary that was on BBC Two a few months ago. There's some interesting characters locally. They don't all want growth, but some of them do like this. What we've also been doing, so we've also got a wider group called Smart Oxford that includes the district councils, city councils, various broader businesses and different parts of the universities. As part of a Smart Oxford project, the city council worked with ORI to look at putting LiDAR onto the refuse sweepers. So these went up and down the streets, and particularly the pedestrian streets. And this will start to look at what information we can get out of LiDAR imaging from autonomous vehicles. So we've got lots of nice LiDAR images that's been rendered up by RRI of Oxford city centre now. And we've done some testing with some PhD students over what you can get out of that information. And that starts to pick out all sorts. So the main area we're looking at the moment is around asset management, which I think a lot of people are looking at. Another project, so this isn't CAV, but it's actually using some of the imaging techniques that CAV has on it. So this is fixed CAV. So this is something we're doing with called Vivacity Labs. They've done a big project in Milton Keynes. We're putting cameras in. Mostly it's focused on cycle detection. But what's interesting, so using some of the same algorithms that are used in the CAV world, they're using fixed cameras. And this is brilliant for us because we're able to get multiple count data now for the first time out of the cameras. It also follows the swept paths of vehicles, so you get really good count data. It even identifies dogs. So for the first time, we will have the number of dogs walking through Oxford, which is going to be really interesting. And that might be a future Innovate UK bit, I reckon. So this is really useful because what this is going to give us is pedestrian and cycling data, which we don't have much of. And that's a big focus of where we're going in the future. So I suppose it's an example of where some of the technology applied into CAVs can go into a slightly different sector and give us really useful feedback. So this is one of our big projects. This is an Innovate UK funded project. This is led by Oxfordshire, called Driven. This is Culham. So this is where Culham's been really important. They've been able to really advance their testing in Culham because it's a real world environment. Been able to do thousands of hours of testing in a relatively safe environment away from prying eyes. What enabled Oxford to do is get out into Oxford really early. So they've been testing in Oxford for a year now. It was a year this month. And these are some of the videos of them testing in Oxford. This is one of their first ones actually. As you can see, they're not going down easy streets and easy routes. There's plenty of pedestrians and cyclists. This is one of the first times they went out and they had this problem of this guy coming back and reversing in, and they were pleasantly surprised with how well it handled that. It didn't come out of autonomy, which was really impressive. So this is expanded now. So it's gone to there's a fleet of 4 cars now, and last month they've just proven or gone through the proving phase of all the cars talking to each other. So we've got them driving around Culham and they all interact with each other. And that's really helpful for junction management, things like that. It really makes roundabouts a lot easier. Thankfully, there is a roundabout on Culham, which gets tested a lot, as that is one of the big problems. And also interesting for Culham is there's actually lots of people. So there's 2,000 people on site, so they intermingle with it. So what our approach has led to in Oxfordshire, and that's through supporting the private sector and the universities, making us as open as possible in the safest way for testing AVs. We've built up quite a good ecosystem now of autonomous vehicle companies. So we've got Robotics, probably the most well known. We've also got RoboRace. They're based in Banbury. They're doing all the autonomous vehicle racing now. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but some of the technology they're developing is really interesting. That's from their recent testing they did in Rome. They're getting faster and faster. I think they're only a few seconds down off humans now. So that's going to be fascinating to when they go into. I think they're going into racing mode next year. All the cars are being built in Banbury, and that really is that's a legacy of us being on the edge of Motorsport Valley. So that's where that's come from. And then this is Street Drone down here. This is the one that came out of the work that we did in MoBox. So this is a company that started up by a guy called Mark Preston, who's also from motorsports. He manages Formula E team called Tech Cheetah. What they found was there was a problem in terms of the research world not being able to access autonomous vehicles. Typical costs are about 250 grand. So they came up with a business model of originally focused on the education market, so the higher education market, of getting the costs down. So you can buy a street drone, a base street drone, for £60,000, which was more within the price range of most universities. But what they found, though, it's really becoming really useful as a sort of minimum viable product testing. So they're getting quite a lot of call on from the private sector now. So they're based out of Oxford. And then we've also got a rival who are also in Banbury. They haven't got a video. They wouldn't let me give me a video. But we're doing quite a lot of projects with them, more around EVs. So they're starting out with EVs, but all of their vehicles are built to become autonomous. They are owned by a Russian with lots of money who also owns RoboRace. So what they're doing is using RoboRace, so they'll transfer the learning into their vehicles. But at the moment, they're really interested in the vehicles they're developing. So they've just supplied UPS with about 25 vehicles and Royal Mail with I think about a similar amount of vehicles of these new EV delivery vehicles. And they've got really interesting construction mechanisms. So what's really fascinating about that in linked to CAV is their factory. They're aiming for 95% automation, and when you see it, it's really scary actually, because the robots are learning from the humans, and then eventually the humans disappear. So they have a full-time factory running with 2 people in the night, which is the brave new world, I suppose. But it's fascinating to see what they're doing. I think from our perspective, what we're saying, maybe this would have happened without us. It probably would have. We don't know. For sure, but I think we've helped accelerate it, and that's I suppose lessons learned for other local authorities is you can really help fuel things, develop, and you can also build an ecosystem. So, success breeds success, and people like to come and converge around other sectors, and I think that's what you need to look out for, and what you can do, anywhere can do. So we're open for collaboration and getting in touch with us.
Thank you very much, Owen.